Zoe Bentley, and this is Exogeology ROCKS, Episode 7. I'm here today with Dr. Britney Schmidt, an astrobiologist. Please tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I study Europa. I study lots of things in the solar system, but Europa is my favorite. I spend most of my time thinking about how Europa might have life on it, like the Earth, except maybe a little bit different, because as we know, Europa is this icy ocean moon of Jupiter. It's about the size of our own moon, but it's covered by an outer shell of ice and a deep ocean underneath. And so most of the work that I'm doing now is trying to understand what the surface of Europa is telling us about what it might be like to live on Europa down underneath.
What are you currently working on, and what's a typical day like for you?
Wow, what I'm currently working on is basically trying to understand environments on Earth that are Europa-like. So I'm working on a project. It's actually my first big project. It's called SIMPLE, which is the long title is Sub-Ice Marine and Planetary Ecosystems, Planetary Analog Ecosystems. And so what we're trying to do, me and a group of big collaborators, is to take a look at floating ice shelves on the Earth. So specifically McMurdo Ice Shelf, which is based where the United States Antarctic program is based, and trying to look at the environment underneath and see if it supports life and how it does that, and then also what the ice shelf itself is doing. Ice shelves are really cool places where glaciers are essentially flowing off of a continent, and then once they hit the water, they kind of float like this, and they all kind of merge together. And so what we're studying is the processes of the ice that creates the ice shelf, really, really thick ice. So underneath, there's no light. So how might you live in a light-free, very cold environment? And that's very much like Europa. So a typical day for me, I answer lots of email, of course, but I look at pictures, I look at some radargrams. Right now, we're in the middle of field planning, and so we have telecons and meetings about how to do our experiment, picking out the right camera, picking out the right field gear, where to fly the plane, things like that. So we're thinking about how to do the experiment right now.
So how exactly might life actually survive under the surface of an ice shelf?
So what's interesting is that ice has actually a lot of things that life can use. It has ways of concentrating nutrients. And it turns out that in the ocean, if you look at the bulk ocean, the middle part, the huge part of it, is actually not a really good place to do business because there's not a whole lot of concentration of nutrition or anything that you need in order to become an organism. And so one of the interesting things is that life tends to take hold at interfaces between one medium and another. And so even though you don't have light, you have a place where you might be concentrating things like nutrients from the ocean, material falling down through the ice itself, because ice has this interesting network that allows kind of particles to work themselves up and down through it. So we're not really certain exactly how a lot of these environments work on Earth, and there are new ones that we're just starting to study. And so we're trying to understand how those organisms do business. And so by going and looking at organisms, looking at ice, looking at the water right below the ice, we can actually learn how these systems work and then try to figure out exactly what you're asking. What would life be like on Europa? Because these are places that are very much like Europa, even though they're just in our own backyard.
That sounds really interesting. So what are some projects that you've worked on before?
I also work on asteroids, I work on meteorites. I'm really interested in how planets get water and then how those planets support life. And so I have worked on modeling that using Hubble. I've used Hubble Space Telescope, various other things. So most of those projects are kind of trying to piece together the history of water in the solar system, which is still something that we're interested on for Europa as well.
What are the best and worst parts of your job?
The best parts of my job are when I get to go stand on an ice shelf in the middle of Antarctica. It's an amazing experience. The worst part is probably having to write write a job application all the time. So research scientists have to propose research all the time, and they have to do a really good job of those proposals in order to get funding. And it's kind of interesting. It's like, generally speaking, you get a job, you work that job until you decide to quit or move on or something like that. And for us, we can decide to stay, but we have to keep funding ourselves. And so we write a lot of proposals. And actually, I like that process. It teaches me a lot about what I'm doing. But it's really, really hard to have to keep doing that. So, but it's totally worth it, and it keeps you on your toes and thinking well, so I like it.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you like it.
I know it sounds hard, right?
So what's the most exciting thing you've done for your job?
My first flight down to Antarctica was the most exciting thing I've ever done. You're sitting in this big, huge plane, and when you strap in, I was actually in there with 2 full helicopters, these absolutely gigantic planes. And then as you're flying down, we kind of can get up and walk around, and right as we started to head into the continent, you could actually look out the window and see it. It's the first time that you're seeing this totally alien-looking place, and it's on our own planet. And the feeling of walking out onto the ice shelf and seeing Mount Erebus, which is an active volcano, covered in ice and blowing out steam, just amazing.
That sounds really amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So do you get to travel a lot?
I actually do. I do a lot of traveling. I have been all over the place. Part of it's for my work, and a lot of it's to meet with other people, because we work on spacecraft and we work on projects with very few people, and they're kind of scattered because they like to live in all kinds of environments. And so a lot of that work is traveling to go meet up with my co-investigators. So I've gotten to go to Europe a bunch, and that's kind of fun. But getting to go down south is pretty much the best.
So what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you for your job?
The funniest thing, probably having to put on field gear for the first time. So it's a really cold environment, and they give you these really huge bulky jackets, this thing we call Big Red, and they're all fluffy, and there's all this other stuff you have to try on. But the ugliest thing in the world are these things we call bunny boots. They're these big white plastic rubber things. And so the first time you put those on, you just look ridiculous. Absolutely hilarious. And so my friends and I decided that we would do a photo shoot. So in the middle of everyone else being very serious and trying on all their gear, we were, running around posing with our, exciting bunny boots, these big, huge, they're like this big around, big bubbles of white rubber, just so hilarious. And a group of scientists laughing at you for being, still being a kid, you're a PhD scientist, but you gotta have fun, right? So that's one of the funniest, so.
That sounds really funny. Do you have any advice for kids who want to get into astrobiology or research science?
Yeah, actually, I think math is really important. It sounds really scary to a lot of people, but just think about it as another language. It's a language that science speaks. If you think about it that way, then you can really think about it like using words. We use equations the way we use words, and it's a way that we communicate with each other. And it's a really great thing to do, and it's very approachable. So just keep doing that, and don't be afraid of it. And to be honest, I think it's getting involved in something that your 10-year-old self would be really excited about. So if you remember what you really were like when you were younger, I'm 30, and I remember what I was really excited about when I was younger is I loved the ocean, and I loved submarines, and I can't believe that I'm trying to kind of do submarines for Europa. That's wild, right? So if you keep that in perspective, you can just work your way up. So lots of math, try really hard, find something you like, and just do it because you like it. That's what I would say.
That's good advice. So thank you very much for talking with us today. This has been Exogeology Rocks, Episode 7. Thanks for watching.